I never want to be in the dressing room. I always want to be on the field. And when I was on the field, I want to be able to do everything. I developed 3 different styles of bowling. I feel in the leg slit. I feel close to the wicket. I always wanted to be in the area where I had to be thinking and concentrating and working out things for myself, because you're always in the game.
Greatest batsman of all time, Don Bradman. Greatest cricketer of all time, Gary Sobers.
People in the Caribbean, I don't think will ever forget the name Sir Garfield Sobers or the name Gary Sobers. Forget the Sir.
Well, there wasn't anything in cricket that he couldn't do. He done things to great bowlers that batsmen just can't do.
He's the best batsman you've ever seen. He was the best bowler you've ever seen. He could catch anything. Yeah, he was unbelievable.
Sobers was like having 3 guys in your team.
Gary will always be a legend in our minds.
The greatest player that has played the game.
When we were young, everybody wanted to turn the colours up like Gary, so we want to walk like him. You know, we wanted to battle him, we wanted to bowl like him.
Absolutely awesome. He was your complete cricketer. Best I've ever seen.
He was amazing, amazing. My favourite cricketer by streets.
They used to cut bats out of pieces of lumber or cut a branch off the coconut tree and use the bough of the coconut branch to make a bat. And of course they would wrap things to make balls. That is how cricket was played in the Caribbean.
So was his mother, Thelma, had to bring the 6 kids up on her own. And she did in I suppose you would call it a disadvantaged district of Bridgetown in the Bayland. And he said we had freedom. And we utilized that freedom, going on the beach and playing cricket and basketball and whatever.
So Gary played primary school cricket for a school called Bay Street, and I played for St. Giles. So Gary was a bowler, a very small man at that time. He was a left-arm spinner. It was at that time that I really knew that he was extraordinary.
Garfield Sobers began his cricket career at 15, when he joined the police team in the Barbados Cricket League. Just 18 months later, he took 7 wickets on his debut for the island. And a year on, a strong performance against the MCC led to his selection for the West Indies.
Ben Hoyes, who was the secretary of the Barbados Cricket Association then, he sent a message saying that I was selected to go to Jamaica for the last test against England in 1954. And I was rather surprised.
Just to show you how talented he must have been when you're playing first-class cricket at 16 and then you're playing test cricket at 17. That is not an easy feat, especially in the Caribbean.
And I walked into the dressing room in Sabina Park, and I just stood up and I looked around, and I saw the names Weeks, Worrell, Walcott, Stallmar, Alan Ray, Valentine, Ramadan. Oh! And I thought to myself, am I in the right place?
Probably the more remarkable thing about Sobers was that he actually made his debut as a number 9 batsman and as a left-arm orthodox spinner. And not long after doing that, he was then sent in to open the batting against Australia with Linwell and Miller bowling. I think in that innings he got 44 and he hit about 8 or 9 fours. And probably that was the thing that decided the West Indies that number 9 was a bit low in the batting order.
Sobers became a regular in the West Indies starting lineup, but struggled to impress with the bat. 4 years after his debut, his top score was only 80. But in 1958, against Pakistan in Kingston, all that would change.
It had never bothered me about getting 100. And because I think from my first day that I played cricket, I was always a team man. And if it means scoring 50 runs for the team to be in it, or to save them, or to anything, I was quite contented to do that.
Sobers did reach his century, and when he hit 300, the world record was in sight.
Clyde Walcott came down to me and said, "Son, you've got 300. You've got all the time in the world. You only need 64 more. And there are not many times you're going to pass this road. So put your head down and just concentrate."
Hanif Mohammed, the opening batsman, who very rarely bowled, told Sobers, when Sobers was, I think, within a single of the Len Hutton's record, said, "I'm going to bowl left-handed." I think he was bowling right-handed. Sobers said, "You can bowl with both hands if you want, I don't mind."
I pushed it into the covers, like Walcott called for the signal, and I took off and got down to the other end, and the whole crowd exploded.
He's 21 at this point. He hadn't scored a Test century before, and he turned it into a world record score, beating Len Hutton's 364.
It might have been quite a shock to some people, but to some of us who were very close to him, we realized that at that stage he had the ability to do what he did.
He took Test cricket the same way he took club cricket, the same way he took cricket on the beach. He never was fazed by the challenge of cricket at the highest level. He always took it as just a game.
Though Sobers had initially been selected for his bowling, 365 not out with the bat could not be ignored. The Bajan was becoming one of the finest all-rounders the game had ever seen.
He took 235 Test wickets, and he did all sorts with the ball. He could bowl left-arm seam, orthodox spin, and left-arm wrist spin. He was also a tiger in the field, so that's a 5-in-1 cricketer, basically.
He started bowling left-arm spin. That was his priority on debut in Jamaica against England. But then he learned to bowl quick swing when he went to play in the leagues in England, Lancashire League.
He was quick when I played against him. If he didn't get you out with his pace and swing, which he could swing it really late, and had that left arm over and had that one going straight across you. So he was a complete fast bowler.
All of a sudden, also he developed the back of the hand ball, which came, you know, back from the off and would go away. He had everything. He had everything.
To be perfect in the art of left arms orthodox, and then to be bowling googlies and Chinaman, and then to be bowling fast with a new ball. How do you perfect that? How do you practice that sort of thing? How much time do you need to spend in the nets to be able to do all that?
I still regard him as the best batsman, let alone whatever else he done on a cricket field. He done things to good bowlers or great bowlers that batsmen just can't do.
People say Don Bradman was clearly the best batsman of all time. There's a strong argument for saying that Gary Sobers was the best all-round cricketer of all time. He didn't just bat, he averaged 57 with the bat, 8,000 Test runs, which by itself he would have been picked as a batsman.
There was just the elegance that the guy had. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but boy, he had power behind those shots.
He did everything. He could bat when you get 365. I think you know a little bit about batting.
He told me that he never fielded in the outfield because he always wanted to be engaged in the game. So he had to be close to the bat. And I can't remember him fielding anywhere but slip or short leg, and he was brilliant in both positions.
He's just a magical player, and I find it hard to find anybody that would be better than Gary.
He kept goal for Barbados, so he perhaps could have kept wicket as well, but he needed to be bowling, so he didn't keep wicket.
Such capabilities ensured a place for Sobers on the 1960 tour of Australia. And significantly, it was the first West Indies series with a black captain at the helm, Frank Worrell.
think one of the weaknesses historically of West Indian cricket has been a lack of direction on and off the ground. Worrell was able to provide that direction at a critical time, and he was fortunate that Sobers came through at that point, but so was Sobers, that he had Worrell as a leader at that time to direct him.
It was a very long time before the West Indies broke the racial barrier and appointed a black captain. He was appointed for the tour of Australia, difficult tour, and you know, if he had failed, the repercussions of that unimaginable on the psyche of West Indians, the psyche of black people in the West Indies, if he had failed.
The form of Sobers leading up to the series had been unspectacular, but on the big stage, he delivered. The first day of the first test, a packed Gabba in Brisbane, saw him score a sublime 132.
Sobers came in with a big reputation, but without form. He didn't have quite the form that they'd expected coming into the test match. And then, of course, he plays this quite remarkable innings. There's an image in the video on it with Sobers playing a straight drive off Benno, and Benno just standing there and clapping. And, you know, it said it all, and that was that type of series. But Sobers was quite incredible.
The match went down in history as the first ever tied test.
Not only was it a tie, but the scoring rates were outstanding, and it revitalized Test cricket. And even though the West Indies lost the series 2-1, it was a very close series.
That was a series of the tied test, and that later on in life you get to appreciate what that all meant to Caribbean people and how much interest there was in the West Indies team being in Australia.
At the end of that series, 100,000 people lined the streets of Melbourne to bid the West Indies farewell. And the closing ceremony in the test match, the crowd sang for "He's a Jolly Good Fellow." You know, it's...
Sobers was now at the top of his game, and arguably the world's finest cricketer. But the sport was not his only interest.
Even as a young boy growing up, the ages of 12, 13, 14, I used to go to midnight shows and come home at 3 o'clock. And I was a kind of a night owl. I find that after a while of going to bed early, I used to lie and think about Truman, Raninath and Statham and all of these different kind of bowlers, and I couldn't sleep.
We went out, had a meal, and Gary said, "Man, look, come on, let's go on. We're going to the Arkaba," which was a nightclub run by a chap called Murray Sargent. We tried to get Gary to go home. It must have been 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. We said, "Gary, there's a test match coming in 2 days' time." He said, "Not to worry, I'm feeling real good." And that's the thing with him. He said he was not someone to stay in bed at night. He liked the nightlife, and he said it relaxed him.
If I went out late at night, I knew if I failed, that people would talk about it. So I had to go out next morning and produce. And the later I went out, the more I produced. Because I want to go out late the next night. I don't want anybody to say, because I was out late, I failed. If you go out late and you perform, nobody says anything. And I was able to do that without any problems.
We eventually got him home, but the two of us were worse for wear, and he wasn't. And he got 100. He got 100 2 days later. You know, he was that kind of individual. He was amazing.
We had to make 260 or something to win. And we sort of knocked it off rather quickly. I was so ecstatic that we had won the first test match I played, we'd won. I'm playing with the world champions. And he said, "Oh, I have to go and, oh, the 10,000 guineas is in half an hour." So we took off. So I said, "My God, is this what test cricket is all about?"
I don't think Garfield Sobers spent a lot of time in the nets. As a matter of fact, I don't think he spent a lot of time sleeping at night, much less going into the nets. He was just such a talented cricketer. He could do everything and did it so well.
Good morning, Gary. Good morning, how are you? All right.
In 1967, English county cricket decreed each team be allowed to sign a non-English player. Inevitably, interest in Sobers was enormous. He eventually picked Nottinghamshire and was immediately made club captain.
Okay. Good weather, isn't it?
Going to Nottinghamshire, turning Nottinghamshire an English county, which was the season before, finished, I think, 3 before the bottom. He then carried in his first season Nottinghamshire from that position up to second position in the championship. And they would have won had not Warwickshire then denied them in the last match. It was tremendous. He did wonders for any team he played for.
Renowned for his graceful and stylish approach to the game, Sobers could also employ brute force if required. Playing for Nottinghamshire against Glamorgan in August 1968, he did just that.
He hit that out of the ground.
I did an interview with him once, and he said we were going to make a declaration, just disregard 6-6s, don't try it. That was quite an aberration. If he got out, didn't matter. He said disregard the 6-6s, but of course it went into the record books and stayed there, and not only helped make his name, but enhanced his name because of the 6-6s.
That's another one. Goodness gracious me.
Malcolm Nash was the bowler. Everybody knows about Malcolm Nash. And not because Malcolm Nash was such a great bowler or a great county cricketer, because Gary Sobers hit him for 6-6s. And of course, everybody knows about the fact that Gary Sobers hit 6-6s.
That's another one up in the enclosure.
And these are deeds that have gone down in cricket folklore, and Sobers simply knew how to get the crowd on his side. You know, he had an eye for the grand gesture.
Oh, he's got the shorter one. It's up again. There it is, bouncing on the concrete. 4 sixes in 4 balls.
Perhaps Sobers doesn't give it all that credit now because he hit 6-6s. He was just going for it. But at the time, and even now, it resonates as one of the outstanding feats of the game.
Go down. Oh, he dropped it over the boundary. Roger Davis caught it, but he doesn't know whether he fell over the boundary or not. 6 it is!
I remember thinking there's only one bloke could do it, and that would be Sobers. If somebody said that there's been 6-6s hit at St Helens, you'd say, I bet Sobers has hit them.
And he's done it! He's done it! And my goodness, it's gone way down to Swansea. 6 on the trot. 36 in 1 over. My goodness gracious, what an over.
Highest individual run scorer, the first player to hit 6 sixes in an over, West Indies captain and one of the finest players ever to grace the game. When a rest of the world squad was being assembled to play against England and Australia in the early 70s, there was only one choice of captain.
Those series were arranged when scheduled series against South Africa for England and for Australia were cancelled because of South Africa's apartheid policies.
The 5-test series against England was won 4-1 by the rest of the world, and Sobers was the star player. He topped both the batting and bowling averages, scoring 2 centuries, 3 50s, and taking 21 wickets. But it was his innings in the 3rd test against Australia which perhaps summed him up best.
In the first innings in Melbourne, Dennis bounced him out. First ball got him for a duck, caught sort of 2nd, 3rd slip somewhere off the shoulder of the bat. And so people were sort of starting to say, oh, has Lilly got the edge on Sobers? I wish they hadn't, because it's a very silly thing to do, is to upset Gary Sobers. After Dennis had got him out for a duck, we were sitting having a drink in the dressing room, and Gary walked into our dressing room, you see, and he walked straight over to Dennis. Dennis is sitting there, and he tapped him on the shoulder, and he said, hey, listen, son, he said, I can bowl bouncers too. He said, but I bat better than you.
Sobers came in and said, he'll pay for that. And he said the first thing he did when Lilly came to bat was to bowl him a bouncer. Second ball, I think he bowled him a bouncer, and he said Lilly turned pink.
But it was with the bat where Sobers really made his mark. In the 2nd innings, he reached his century in just 129 balls, and at the end of day 3, remained not out on 139.
There was a straight drive he played against Lilly, which is still talked about in cricket circles, when Sobers acknowledges that he had to change his mind halfway through the shot, and managed to do so, and to hit him down the ground for 4.
Straight down the ground, great shot, beautiful shot.
It just goes to show how quick he was, quick in thought, quick in movement, and quick in eye.
Magnificent shot, and Sobers does not move from the crease.
He was an extraordinary player. So much poise, so much balance, and of course placement. Something which is often overlooked was the placement. He could place the ball immaculately.
Magnificent shot, and that's 4 runs. There's his 250.
Sobers reached 250, an innings including 33 fours and 2 sixes. He was eventually dismissed for 254.
He could be out. Doug Walters, caught it mid-on. Gary Sobers leaves the ground. The crowd is standing. I'll say no more. Just listen to that crowd.
It was a performance described by the legendary Sir Don Bradman as probably the greatest exhibition of batting ever seen in Australia.
That's the ultimate accolade, isn't it? The ultimate compliment from the great man, the greatest batsman.
That was some innings, and I mean he wasn't a spring chicken then. He was getting on a bit. Yeah, he was unbelievable. I mean, you talk to anyone that's seen Sobers play, and I guarantee you they all say the same.
So Sir Donald Bradman comes out and says the greatest innings ever played, and I think he wasn't too far from the truth.
After 93 tests, 8,032 runs at an average of 57.78 and 235 wickets, Garfield Sobers retired from cricket in 1974. But there were no misgivings about saying farewell to an astonishing 20-year career.
That's one of the things that I learned in life early, that there come a time in every man's life when he has to give up something. And I was always prepared for that. I had lost the interest in the game. I had lost that kind of glory.
In 1975, Gary Sobers was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II in Barbados for his services to the game. A game he graced with both bat and ball. He will be forever remembered for his all-round ability and for making a difficult game look exceptionally easy.
Whether it was a test match, a first-class match, whatever it was, Sobers always looked at ease, always enjoying himself, never struggling. So many of those who played with and against him will say that they've never seen Sobers really struggle. When he was batting, bowling, everything came naturally to him.
He was a gent for a start, Gary. He knew how good he was, and again, he had a great respect for the game and for the people he played against. I've never ever heard a bad word about Gary Sobers from anybody, and he took everybody to the cleaners.
There wasn't anything that was normal about Gary's cricket. The word genius is probably tossed around a bit too often, but in my book, Gary was a cricketing genius.
I don't think we need worry about that. That's gone right into the crowd.
In order for you to reach places, there must be people who inspired you before. And West Indies has got a wonderful legacy where that's concerned. I think Sir Gary fits in this particular category, and his name will go on for a long, long time.
Who was the greatest cricketer? Certainly the greatest batsman, unquestionably, was Bradman. But when it comes to the greatest cricketer, you can mount a very strong argument indeed for Sobers.
I have no regrets whatsoever. You know, I enjoy playing the game. I enjoy playing in every country. I enjoy what I have done. I enjoy the glory and the glamour. I enjoy the ups and downs because you have to take them. The criticism I enjoy. Never looked at the sport sheet. Never looked at how many runs I made. Never looked at what anybody said about me. I didn't want to. Wasn't interested. I knew what I had done. I didn't want anybody to tell me. So I didn't read at all. So I didn't have that kind of pressure on me. I enjoyed it while I was playing it. When I retired, I had had enough. And I was quite contented to come out and let somebody else enjoy the limelight and whatever else that goes with it, the criticisms.